morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this panel. I'm Martina Pagani. I'm a senior manager at Bain & Company. Been working in the energy industry for the last 10 years with a focus on the Greek market. So the topic of our discussion today is on the energy transition, but not just on the energy transition at large. The idea is to touch more specifically on the role of the ecosystem. So what players from different sectors can do to drive a better transition, a faster transition, and even a more secure transition. We are now at the tipping point. I hope you can hear me well. We're at the tipping point because we're over 1 year from the outbreak of the war, over 6 years from the signing of the Paris Agreement. So today, more than ever, energy transition must go hand in hand with another topic, that is the security of supply. So green, but also safe and secure energy for customers. And we believe the ecosystem, so not just energy companies, but wider actors in the country can play a significant role to drive this type of effort. And this is why we have this very knowledgeable and, let me say, diversified panel with us today. The idea is to really touch on the aspects of the transition with stakeholders representing different areas of the country, different industries. By ecosystem, we mean everything. We mean public institutions, we mean financial institutions, we mean, of course, energy companies, but the overall value chain, so suppliers, customers, everything that can play a role in the energy sector and beyond. So to tackle this topic, we have with us, as I was saying, different representatives of the Greek market and beyond. We have Helena. She's the ESG, climate change and sustainability head at the Motor Oil Group. On my left, we have Deike. She's a colleague of mine, but representing the private equity practice at Bain. We have Emmanouel, Moustakas from Terna, a very diversified company, energy again and beyond. Aggelos from PPC, head of product and marketing. And finally, Chryssanthi, more on the financial institution side, so also to get the perspective of that area. I would start from Helena. Helena, we know motor oil plays a pivotal role in the country energy system. It grants secure supplies, green supplies. So first of all, do you see any trade-off between energy security and sustainable/green energy today and especially going forward?
Thank you, Martina. I think that, no, I don't see a trade-off, to be really honest. I think that many people say that there should be a trade-off, but I think we do have the trilemma, as we say. So we do have to deal with the security and the independence of the energy system. At the same time, we look at the decarbonization aspect and of course, the affordability, the social aspect, the fact that people can afford the energy and at the same time, they need to, be able to say to access it, right? So I think that we do have the trilemma, and it's very, very, how can I say? It's very strong, the feeling about the trilemma, particularly because of the war. And to be really honest, if there was not the war, we wouldn't have this trilemma. So I think that it was a wake-up call, okay, for all the companies and particularly for the European Commission. On the other hand, I think what we're facing now, because we got used to this type of a trilemma now and the war, is another trade-off, which is about accelerating the energy transition, but with most sustainable and environmental clean technology. And this is something that we cannot do it by ourselves. I'm speaking now from our group. The fact that we have managed to create a multi-energy company and be able to say to invest heavily, both on the maintenance and the energy transition of our refinery, and at the same time investing heavily on alternative fuels. We do have a very, I would say, ambitious 2030 strategic plan with decarbonization goals. We call it 30-30 25, which is 30% reduction by 2030 on scope 1, on scope 2, equally 30%, and then on scope 3, which is the most challenging one, as you know, because sometimes it's 80 to 90% of the total CO2 emissions is on scope 3. We have a target of 25%. So we have put our targets, but now, of course, we need to create a decarbonization plan in order to monitor the process of it. Now, with the EU taxonomy, and this is something, of course, that is nothing to do with us and the companies, but has to do, let's say, with the European Commission, the regulations, and at the same time with the financial institutions, you know, all the type of activities and investments we make has to be taxonomy aligned. We have a very ambitious strategic plan and investment plan as well. It's around 4 billion. And some of them, I think 1.5 goes to the energy efficiency and maintenance, and the other one goes to the, then 2.5 goes to the energy transition. However, we have managed to make almost 1 billion of investment, which is taxonomy aligned, and the rest, which we have another 1 billion, is on energy efficiency. Guess what happened? Only 1 billion has been actually be eligible for the EU taxonomy aligned activities. What means basically is that we do have a strategy, but the strategy, and it's, as you very well said, all the other stakeholders to be able to say, to work together, okay, and create a common, let's say, decarbonization plan based on equal principles. Unfortunately, this is not happening, and that's why every company and every, let's say, organization or financial institution has its own agenda, decarbonizing, which is not, unfortunately, aligned. So I think that everybody has a really good plan, but at the same time, it needs to be able, let's say, to discuss in order to have a common strategy and to be able to achieve the targets that we promise to our stakeholders that we will definitely deliver, but we cannot do it alone.
Clear. Probably on the same line in terms of diversification of assets and decarbonization plans, Emmanouel, talking more specifically on a specific asset type, so renewables. There is a strong plan in Greece for renewables rollout. We know Terna is playing, again, a pivotal role on that side. What barriers and what accelerators do you see specifically on renewables, and how you could tackle them, meaning how an energy or integrated company like Terna could create and could push for the right ecosystem for accelerating the renewable plan?
Thank you, Martina. This is actually a hot question because someone asked exactly that just before we entered the panel. So I was discussing that with a colleague. Now, we all know that there has been a rapid development of renewables over the last years, and this has caused the distribution and transmission networks to be saturated. It is always slow that these networks are upgraded, or even more difficult if we have to create new ones. So practically, we now have a ceiling in the development of more infrastructure, of more renewables, because of the lack of these distribution and transmission networks. Now, the funny thing is that these exact limitations in the existing networks and the delay in their further development actually affect some new mega consumers of electricity. We have now, and this was not anticipated up until a few years before, huge electricity consumers, and I'm referring to the transportation projects. We now have motorways, ports and airports that suddenly require more and more electricity, and the networks face exactly the same difficulties in providing them with these amounts of electricity. Fortunately, there is a way to tackle both problems, so kill two birds with one stone. I'm referring to localized production of renewables, storage of this renewable electricity production, and energy management. And there is now a way that we can actually provide these huge new electricity customers with their electricity needs, develop more renewable electricity production, and at the same time work along with the grids, respect their requirements, and provide for a levelized cost of energy, which is actually competitive. In Terna, we're standing with one leg in transportation, one leg in energy. So we're combining this. We're just now finalizing a pioneering project that we believe that probably will set new grounds and will be applicable very soon across the industry.
So some good news.
That's good news.
Again, touching, since I see synergies here, with Aggelos, we have discussed at length, let's say, the role that distributed generation can have to modify consumption patterns and also to create, new proposition to customers. We know we are moving from a world that was, let's say, commodity supply, and that's it, to something that is a full value proposition to customers, so new services, new products. And we're talking mostly about hard services, so asset-based, like renewables is one, like small-scale renewables is one. Heat pump is another example, for instance. E-mobility is another case. We need an ecosystem to be able to deliver this type of solutions to customers. So what type of, let me say, value chain and ecosystem effort do you think is needed in Greece specifically to enable this type of at-scale rollout, so beyond piloting?
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Martina. First of all, I think you're right to say that an ecosystem is always pivotal for any transformation to happen. This is because transformation, by definition, is a change of such magnitude that really requires a wide mobilization of all impacting elements. Now, the green and sustainable energy transition is certainly a transformation in many aspects. If you consider, for example, the aspect of sustainability that has to do with massive solutions, like the ones that you mentioned in the areas of heating, transportation, or energy production, the adoption of such solutions is a clear transformation for our everyday life and a break of many of our habits. Now, going back to the ecosystem role, in our case, the sustainability through massive private solutions like heat pumps or photovoltaics, I'm really convinced that there are three success factors. The first one is the efficient engagement of the customer as a stakeholder. And then it is the proper operation of two very important ecosystems around that, which is financing and field force. At this moment, these two functions, and especially the delivery through field force, I don't think that they are well organized in Greece and not ready in many aspects. For example, in terms of size, processes, automation, integrity or consistency of the delivered service, certification in many aspects. Of course, as it always happens, there are cases of excellent skill set or quality delivery, but to achieve a rapid acceleration of sustainable solutions penetration, we really need, and the supplier's role in this is really key, we need to provide innovative business cooperation frameworks to the companies of the delivery ecosystem in order to aggregate their outcome and get scale. And also we need to help them out in the aspects of processes, automation, in order to guarantee a consistent quality outcome. In parallel, the creation of such a delivery ecosystem, I think it needs a heavy support from financing solutions, especially and primarily to the end customer, and also the heavy investment on the awareness of the customers around sustainability. Yes. Awareness in practical terms, not theoretical. What sustainability means for each one and how I can achieve it. I think only this way we can hope for a real mentality change which places sustainability in a better place in our everyday life. And this is the ground that we need in order to achieve such a scale. So I think success goes through these three factors, the engagement of the customer and the mobilization of these important ecosystems, financing and delivery.
Yeah. We'll touch on customers a bit later, because I think customers, let's say, push is needed as well to accelerate, but more on the financial side, since we have Chryssanthi and Delphi with us. I'll do one question for you, let's say, together, then you take it. How can, respectively, financial institutions like Piraeus Bank and private equity funds accelerate the transition? Meaning, do you think they can actually be one of the core drivers of change, preempting moves that can come from other sectors later on? And what type of instruments / specific tools for you, Chryssanthi, in Greece, do you think they can actually adopt?
Absolutely. First of all, to say that I'm very close to what the colleague said as a mindset. The banks, given their pivotal role in the whole financial intermediation in our country and overall in the European landscape, will play a very serious, very important role. To tell you that, first of all, I'm a finance person, and now ESG sits with finance. Yeah. So apart from net interest margin and fee margin, in our key dashboards, we have scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. And the whole focus is to, first of all, reduce our footprint, and then, of course, name of the game, to measure financed emissions and play our part in the whole transition journey the economy will do. Our role is reactive and proactive. Okay. I think that in the reactive angle, we've done a lot. To give you a sense, out of the 7-8 billion of new loans per year, we disburse approximately 1 billion in transition projects, both corporates and households. But then right now, we are doing a lot of homework so as to digest all the pillars of the National Energy and Climate Plan that we've seen two months ago, and all the new elements, because it's not only renewables, of course, they are a key, but it's also synthetic fuels, electrification of transportation, it's green hydrogen, it's offshore wind, all these new angles in the transition. So we want to be there, and we will be there. This is a commitment on our behalf. And what I need to point out also is that this journey right now is mainly about big industries, the manufacturing sector, the shipping sector, the food processing sector, but next day it's about the farmer, the small business, the SME that will have eventually to do this transition. Maybe they're not aware right now about the steps, but we will be there with the knowledge and the know-how to facilitate this journey. Right now our country, as we know, has approximately 76 billion, megatons of CO2 emissions. This needs to be the end of the game at zero. Yes. 2050. Half of this envelope needs to be abated by 2030. So I think that the whole ecosystems and ourselves, we will do our best to facilitate this progress.
Indeed, if I may add the private equity lens to that, I think the energy transition is a huge opportunity for private equity and is on top of investors, because in the end it's an opportunity for two things, what they actually can do best. It's one, provide investment capital, and second, to help the businesses accelerate their growth. And also the energy transition overall provides various investment opportunities, and it's actually not an easy field to invest in, right? I mean, just imagine all the uncertainty there is with all the business model that's so exposed to the regulation, whether it's headwinds or tailwinds, depending, and that might change in the future. And I think the last point, what's also on top of investors is, I mean, we have 60 trillion of US dollars being committed to be net zero by 2050, and all these investors have actually committed to transition their portfolio. And we know from our work that 1/3 of those decarbonization plans actually fail. So there's really a lot to do, both in the investment side as well as in working with the company on their decarbonization plans.
Thank you, Delphi. Touching on the last point, which is probably one of the very first one to me, that is customers. We know customers, especially industrial ones, are evolving. They have specific ESG needs, and probably they can play a pivotal role, let me say, in the transition. So how do you see, and it's a question for everyone, want to take it, how do you see going forward the balance between an acceleration coming from companies having to meet their targets, their specific decarbonization and ESG plans vis-a-vis what's the portion coming from customers who have a specific, let's say, voice on ESG matters, retail customers, but B2B customers as well.
Now, if I may, I think obviously you have the companies providing solutions and the customers who need them. Necessarily, you need both of them. They shape each other. So I think the answer is in the middle, but I think that we're fortunate enough to have some players in the market that have both the needs of a customer and the means to provide solutions. And in some cases, we're going to see some pioneering solutions there.
Yes. Also, if you want, Helena, on specific sectors that you see in Greece that may get this role going forward.
Yes. Well, I think that one of the main sectors in Greece is shipping, as you know, and maritime. And, you know, we were responsible in Greece for 25% of the trade, I would say, since we operate the vessels, both tankers and bulk carriers. And, of course, the maritime industry is looking for the new fuels, the new maritime fuels, in order for them to be able to say to achieve their own targets. Now, how we can actually produce new maritime fuels if the vessels are not ready, or if they don't know yet what type of designs they need to have in order to use this type of maritime fuels. So it's always the chicken and egg situation. That's why I always insist on discussing together all the stakeholders, including, of course, the investors, about, you know, trying to find standards where we can invest heavily, of course, on this type of fuels, but also knowing that this type of fuels that will going to be used by a specific industry. In the motor oil, we use a hybrid model, and this is we will continue to use, all right, as long as the market conditions actually permits. And the reason being is because we want to, you know, sustain our business partners and clients, and at the same time be able, let's say, when the conditions are ready, to be able to offer them, let's say, the new alternative fuels, and helping them also to be able, let's say, to have this type of new designs, for instance, in the maritime industry. So we work very close with the maritime industry, we work very close with the ports. We trying to, you know, go forwards with proposals in the European Commission in order to facilitate specific infrastructure for the ports and the maritime industry. But this is something that is in our strategy. This is not something that has been asked by the investors, the regulation, or anybody else. This is something that we think that it's logical, it's a common sense. And I think this is how we're going to go forward.
So you're setting the standard and then something will follow.
Exactly.
Talking about retail customers,
yes.
One thing I would like to say is that the need of the customer for sustainable living alone is never enough for a massive change. So there is a very crucial duty and role of companies, like the suppliers, for example, like to provide real valuable solutions to the customers. They must have a real value in order to be adopted.
Economic and environmental.
This is for sure. The customer's need is never enough.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Martina.